Thank you, Com. I want to do it differently. I want to start with the conclusion. Well, maybe some reflections on how what I want to talk about has been raised somewhat, and then go back to what I recommend as a possible program of action. Now, the conclusion is, I think this hybrid event, people online and people in communities meeting in halls, various other platforms, presents a great opportunity for us for deepening participation and activism. It also, of course, the climatic and other benefits are obvious because people are not flying around and living in luxury hotels. So that is the conclusion that I endorse, and I'll come back to hopefully. But people have raised, everyone has spoken so far about the role of state surveillance and of corporations surveillance, but how the state has used corporate services to surveil citizens and competitors and other espionage, okay? Now, I'm supposed to touch a little bit on citizenry. Now, the sad issue is that citizens are actually involved in spying on other citizens, and they are called upon as well as not only spying, but to mobilize politically overtly using social media and other forms against another sector of marginal people. Operation Dudula is one. We can go to the June or July so-called riots inspired by various other forces, poverty, inequality, Zuma, whatever. You can talk about the January 6th unrest in the US Capitol, which was all publicly available on social media. But it does show that social media is not a life on its own. It sometimes has an impact on the lived reality and sometimes not. In both the July unrest in South Africa, as well as the US Capitol issues, it looks like the intelligence services of the CIA and all those big guns we see in movies were really caught off guard. Now, one of the things that Palestinian civil society groups have taken up, and they have not been very vocal around Pegasus and such like, although at the international level, some of the groups have. At a local level, some of them have felt the brunt of how they've been censored by Facebook, but have also found that those who are opposed to the liberation of Palestinians have sought to recast them as enemies of Jewish people or anti-Semitic, you know? So the discourse of the powerful has come through where the new social media groups have actually not necessarily helped our cause. So a mention has been made of Pegasus and such like, and Edward Snowden in 2013, breaking our innocence by telling us how we use these platforms have also become, put us on the agenda for being easily available to be mined and undermined. Now, for me, I think that Henriette's particular point, when she said that, for example, the increased access of internet services, if you like, does not mean that democracy is deepened. I'm putting it in the way I want to. Let me give you an example around the analog switch off to digital. The minister goes on air and speaks about it. She broadcasts not through SABC or all the other live channels that she could use, radio, etc., but on YouTube. She then offers WhatsApp and other such facilities as a basis for how public should interface with her department. They do not say when the cutoff date has been agreed on the 30th of September, you can meet us, our officials, at the various supermarkets, community halls. They do not say that. They say you must interface electronically. But they're trying to deal with the digital divide by using tools that exclude people. This is how this government works. It is truly a CEO's government. Then, let me give you another example. The police say on their website that they're trying to make an amendment to the law on terrorism. Pogdatara, we call it. When it was originally brought about, I think 2013, there was a mass of civil society groups working with Media Review Network, et cetera, freedom of expression. Now, nobody even knows that this issue has been there. But the police department says on their website, somewhere in their media platforms, you'll find the full bill on our page. You go to the page, you don't find it there. You go to search on the internet, eventually you'll find the full bill on the government website. So clearly, they put you through a maze to chase around. So citizens who are already marginalized, as you've heard here, through load shedding, historic inequalities of housing, water supplies, etc., suffer a lot more. And then, of course, when they try to resist, they're spied upon. Now, I think what is left for me here is to look at what we can do going forward, right? We can lament here and argue how our government are increasingly trying to censor us using the Films and Publications Board. But how many of us are engaged in those processes? So the first thing I want to suggest is that we need to try and come together to build the media and communications commons, this digital commons. We should come together as the first point, as we are doing it today, and to deepen it in local levels and in provinces, right? But it has to be democratic. It has to be bottom up. It cannot be imposed by those who are techno-savvy, who know more than us. We've got to speak a simple language that people can understand. It also must include a people-centered SABC. And here we need to decide what it is: the free-to-air TV stations, community television, community radio, and all of them must be transformed. I personally have been involved in some of these spaces, but during the height of COVID, they fired a blind journalist in one of the community radio stations, and I could not get help anywhere from the networks that fight for freedom for community radio stations and to get a higher expression for this stable. So they must be part of this. This new social media platforms and tools that are available, right? The People's Media Consortium that I'm a part of have been working on producing media. So they do provide the tools for getting broadcast quality media. But they, as you've heard, they also have within them embedded problems because this is not a neutral media platform. They are not neutral. So social media, we must know, is problematic, right? But we need to then find ways of engaging the platform holders, the service providers, the regulators, as we've heard earlier from Alison, right? To ensure that this platform that is not neutral becomes an empowering tool for those who've been historically disadvantaged. I've said if they want to roll out 5G, they don't start in Sandton. They've got to start in these poverty nodes that the Mbeki era discussed so much. For all his other faults, that's a good focus, not radical enough, but far more radical than what we are experiencing now. I want to talk about we also who are active on radio and that. A few years ago, we engaged SAFM when Tim Modise was there to have an annual gathering of listeners. But there's nothing wrong for groups to organize listeners and viewers so that we can begin to put pressure on those who provide a service. Similarly with Vodacom and MTN, who took the lion's share of the spectrum, right? We need to see and work ways of how we engage ICASA and USASA, all those that are supposed to provide universal access, Centec. We need to find ways of democratizing them and make them accountable and show them that how an elite transformation program doesn't benefit us. The Black Sash, as we've heard in the discussion here, had user committees and activism in the hands of our grants campaign. We need to get them together. We in the Benchmarks Foundation have got community monitors, and last Thursday I spoke to them about this conference, right? And we spoke about how to integrate digital rights as human rights, because they complain when there are electricity cuts, they even lose data, not only the data theft from the companies, but from Eskom, which simply wipes it off. So we need to get all those that are user-inspired to help to build a popular movement from below. And the People's Media Consortium is willing to serve as one part of that coordinating platform. We need to make sure that those of us who want to build the commons come together. We need to contest commercial mainstream media while we build our own media. You know, the media, the print and television and others, print in particular, were regarded as the fourth estate. Ignacio Ramonet said that they have not been, and it's true, they've been part of the subjugation of people. If you look at our media platform, we don't even know who pays for them. Of course, when New Frame went, there's a big discussion about who the funder is, right? But who funds all these others? We need to have a clear discussion about that. Ignacio Ramonet said a couple of years ago, we need to create a new estate, the fifth estate, that will put civic force against the new coalition of media rulers. He proposes then that an association of journalists, academics, etc., which is this kind of commons that I'm talking about, must come together. But we from the global south must play a pivotal role to turn that around. How am I doing for time, Chair?
I think you're doing okay. Maybe like, 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay. The People's Media Consortium have been trying to organize and get unions and NGOs to work together. The Year 2 and others, Year 2 collective that has been integral in organizing this have also been members. SEF2, Black Sesh, all of them are members, but we need to make sure we get a non-sectarian alliance to make sure, so that we can put pressure on the powerful. In the recent court case where media monitoring and SOS played a role, the Save Free TV played a powerful organizing role. And we need to get people from this coalition to make sure that we win the read the RDP and all those old documents. We need to give her a present by sending her that. As regards the principles of the SABC, they used to say before they were model employer. Now they've dropped it out of clear honesty. They knew they were lying. But 14 years ago, I was part of the teachers union. Workers' World Media Productions organized a number of us in the unions, and we campaigned to get a Workers' World program on SAFM. It worked well for 14 years, and it was unceremoniously dumped by the public broadcaster. Now, for us fighting for free TV, which means community radio, public television, ETV, and those likes, means there must be a reformed agenda. It cannot be business as usual. They must bring back the programs that speak for the workers and the poor. We must also, point number 5, build our research capacity. Because, when the case took place, we couldn't find out, which people were getting set-top boxes, which were not. We were arguing rather theoretically that there are more and more people earning more than 3,500, but they're the working poor and not covered. But we need to do more empirical research to help our struggles. So we need much of this. We need to build our research capacity and challenge universities that are too elitist in how they provide their knowledge services. The first challenge we face is to discuss how we tackle the concentrated power of corporations in this social media and digital space. Facebook, Meta owns WhatsApp, Instagram. We have not spoken enough about how we can get these guys to be democratized. Should the regulators step in, as we've heard? Should we get user committees to get involved? Can we have a boycott of them? They look too big to fail. But we have not discussed the alternatives of Signal, Telegram, or Jitsi. In Europe, that's big, but not in South Africa. What's holding us back? The algorithms harm us, right? In the chat, we found Shaba talking about white liberals, if you like, with good intentions, trying to build alternative algorithms. But we need to research what it means to be a truly empowering one that can include all of us. When New Frame counts as one of its fault lines, why it fell, they say that the algorithms were changed, but they were not built around clicks. They were built on other stuff like that. So we need to rebuild the movement while taking advantage of the spaces there. Chair, I've got 2 more points, right? Related to this, and I think Marcus Solomon raised the issue about children, and he spoke about how Kentucky Fried Chicken and others are being put down the throats of kids. I want to go deeper, Marcus, Comrade Marcus. You met me in no lekker hoor. Microsoft Teams, Google Docs, all that becomes a staple diet of school children. These are proprietary systems where the government and schools and universities pay for, and the available open source materials are not used. We need to fight these guys, the universities, to make sure they change. You know, taking the statue down is fine, but the daily exploitation has to be fought. So we need to revisit finally what nationalizing these mean. It is clearly impossible. Democratizing, socializing, you know, all this is part of the agenda for us going forward, right? But these platforms are not neutral, finally. We need design justice, which includes our voices, women's voices, women who bear the brunt of violence by men, homophobic violence against other men, capitalist elite power must be challenged. But here we need to sit with techies who listen and not dictate. This is what design justice calls for as we go forward in building the commons. But we will need money. The sector, if we all work together, must have one pot of money which we administer. And we need to find out the people who help fund this can give seed money, but the government must give us money back from our taxes that we in the NGO sector pay for. Thank you very much.